Custody battles are sadly all too frequent in the United States, and rarely do they provoke much attention. But a New Jersey father is embroiled in an even more traumatic type of family drama, one that began 5 years ago when his wife took their son to her native Brazil and never returned. Instead, she started a new life with a new husband. But when she suddenly died, he was still not allowed to fully reunite with his 9-year-old son. Indeed, their future together is still very much in the balance, as he told Jeffrey Kaufman earlier today in Brazil.
David Goldman has, he says, made this trip from New Jersey to Rio de Janeiro more than a dozen times in the last 5 years in his struggle to reclaim his young son.
I hope my son will be saved to come home to his family.
And for a moment this week, he allowed himself to believe that this would be his last trip here.
And I've been off that roller coaster.
In an exclusive interview, he spoke with ABC News in his Rio hotel this afternoon.
I was hopeful, but I've been down this road so many times and have been thwarted so many times.
When you heard about Thursday's decision, another stay, what was your reaction?
Here we go again.
Goldman's struggle began in 2004 when his Brazilian-born wife Bruna told him she was taking their 4-year-old son Sean to Rio for a brief visit with family.
Well, I drove her, my son, her parents to the airport for a 2-week vacation. Love, hugs, kisses, see you in a couple weeks. And that was the last time I ever saw Bruna again, and it was over 4.5 years before I saw my son.
How did you find out that you weren't going to have your son back at home?
Well, she basically started out as, we need to talk. Our love affair is over, and I'm going to stay in Brazil. If you ever want to see your son again, you have to come down here and sign all these documents, giving her full custody, never pressing criminal charges.
Goldman says he tried in vain to get his son back to visit his son, but his wife, who had remarried, refused. Then a year ago, she died in childbirth.
Seja enviada aos Estados Unidos.
Goldman went to court in Brazil to assert his claim as the only surviving parent. Every major court decision here has gone his way, but his wife's husband, a wealthy and powerful lawyer, and her mother have fought every step of the way. On Wednesday of this week, 3 judges on Brazil's Court of Appeal were unanimous when they handed down an order that the Brazilian family deliver Sean to his father at the U.S. consulate here in Rio within 48 hours.
Tired, anxious.
That is why David Goldman came down here again. But before the deadline expired, a single judge on Brazil's Supreme Court ordered a stay, saying he wants the court to review the case again. New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith has been championing Goldman's case since he heard about it in February.
What's gone wrong here in Brazil? What's not working?
Well, a very powerful, well-connected family here in Rio de Janeiro, Mr. Lenza Silva, has been able to use endless delaying tactics, obstructionist tactics in the courts.
Is this a custody case?
No, it is primarily a kidnapping case, a child abduction case.
Now, is that your language, or
no,
is that the law?
That's the language of the law.
It wasn't until this year that Goldman actually saw his son. It was under court order. The Brazilian family insisted the boy stay in their compound under close watch.
Does he ask you why you didn't visit him for 4.5 years?
He asked me the first day I saw him.
What did he say?
He said, where were you for 4 years? How come you didn't come see me? And I told him, I've been here several times, many, many times, always just for you, Sean. And obviously, I didn't want to explain to him what the real thing is going on here. So I just said there was always an issue with the courts, that it couldn't work out.
How does he understand what's going on? What does he say to you?
I don't know. We don't speak about that.
But Sean's Brazilian relatives paint a different picture. They insist the boy wants to stay here, and that's why they want to keep him. They know this very public, very nasty fight has made them villains in the eyes of some.
Dear Mr. Goldman, as you certainly know, I represent the family of Sean.
Which is why this afternoon the Brazilian family extended what it said was an olive branch. At a news conference, family lawyer Sergio Tostes read aloud an invitation to David Goldman from Sean's Brazilian grandmother, who sat at his side.
I'm authorized by Mrs. Silvana Bianchi to invite you, Mr. Goldman,
to spend Christmas night at her house. This will be a long-awaited family reunion.
But the tone of conciliation was soon followed by a threat to discredit David Goldman if he doesn't comply by the family's terms. What would they say?
That he's not qualified to raise Sean.
And how would you prove that, sir?
With facts.
What facts?
I'm not discussing my legal strategy with you.
Do you feel you have those facts?
Of course I do. Of course I do. And they are very damaging. And that's why I'm offering peace, not war.
David Goldman told us he did not come here for a supervised visitation with a family he believes is holding his son hostage.
Are you going to try to visit your son?
I want to try to reunite with my son and bring him home to his family, who have been waiting for over 5 years.
They'll argue that your son has spent most of his life now.
He's kidnapped. How, of course. I've been trying to fight him back. You take a child, you keep them away, you hold them in a country illegally, you spend 5 years trying to turn that child against the parent that you kidnap him from. It is a shame. It is completely shameful and disgraceful that this is continuing. He needs to come home. He needs to be freed from this. He needs to be a little boy.
Goldman says an appeal of this latest court-ordered stay is in the works. His legal counsel say it could technically be overturned in the next few days. But with Christmas and the Brazilian summer holidays approaching, he may have to wait till February when the Supreme Court here reconvenes. And so, yet again, he faces the prospect of returning home alone.
Pray for us.
I'm Jeffrey Kaufman for Nightline in Rio de Janeiro.